Thank you, Roz. Yes, Iain Payten and Sam Phillips joining us from 9 newspapers. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hey, Nick.
We're going to go to the Tars first up, Sammy. Some good and some bad news when it comes to team news this week.
Yeah, that's right. As we go to air tonight, can reveal that Lockie Swinton and Jack Dempsey will not play for the Tars against the Reds this weekend. Both have got foot injuries, as I understand it. Thankfully, they do have Will Harris coming back. He's been out since round 1. He will, I'm hearing, start at number 8. Hugh Sinclair will go back to number 6, and Sam Wykes, I'm hearing, is likely to get to the start at lock. So they've also got Izzy Parisi coming back at 13 and Angus Bell coming to the front row. So there's a couple of ins there, but also some pretty huge outs.
And this is where the depth issue that we've talked about a lot comes into it, Nick. They've only got 7 Wallabies, the Waratahs, and at any one time they've got about 3 or 4 of them out. And that's where you need your depth on the edges. Interestingly, Dave Rennie's been down at the Waratahs this week and brought in the Wallabies team psychologist, who's a new addition, I think, as well. So I'd be interested to see what sort of messages they've been able to get across to the Tars. You think that they'd be wanting to focus pretty heavily on defence, almost 40 points a game. And as Sam wrote in the weekend's papers, that has them on track to be the worst Waratahs team of the modern era.
Going to be really fascinating too when the selectors sit down, which at this stage is penciled in for Sunday, to talk this initial Wallaby squad. Just how many Tars are in that squad? Is there a record low number of Tars to ever make it to a Wallaby squad?
Yeah, I wish we had official numbers on an extended squad like this, because at the moment it's hard to imagine more than sort of 3 or 4 guys making that. You'd think maybe Lockie Swinton, Angus Bell up front, but outside of that, there's a coin flip on a few, like Will Harrison probably would be in the mix. But outside of that, it's really hard to imagine. Compared to last year, they had 10 or 11. It could be down to 3 or 4 in this big squad. That's a pretty big indication of where they're at the moment.
At the risk of making this a bit of a Waratahs fest, the good part about that, I guess, if there's a silver lining, is that you've got 4 other teams who are actually playing pretty good footy, all of them. So there are plenty of people, young guys, putting their name up for spots, first spots. You've got a guy like Trevor Hosea down in Melbourne playing out of his skin. You've got the Queensland midfield playing great football. So as much as we focus on the dire situation of the Waratahs, it pays to remember that there are some plenty good players running around in the other teams.
No doubt. Talking of dire situations, there's if you're from England, an England rugby fan, bit of a dire situation for their Six Nations campaign. And it's interesting now to see the media in England, which for so long has been on board with Eddie Jones, turn very quickly.
Well, this is why Eddie Jones gets paid absolute mint, is because you got to deal with the good and the bad of the English rugby scene. Look, he's under all sorts of pressure at the moment. Had a pretty poor Six Nations campaign, and to top it off, he threw out a bit of sledging at the English media, sort of talking about rat poison and the like. So he is under some pressure to keep his job. I believe there's a meeting with the RFU next week between Eddie and the RFU about his plans for the future. Let's not forget that he goes through this a bit, Eddie. He's a mid-cycle kind of. The slump in the mid-cycle is not unusual for Eddie. He dropped 6 in a row in 2018. They came close to punting him at that point. They didn't, and he ended up making the World Cup final. So he has record there. As a Wallabies coach, he lost 7 in a row in 2005, mid-cycle. But the ARU actually did get rid of him. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Judging from headlines like that, the English media may not be on his side this time.
I think it'd be premature, but wouldn't you love it? Because he probably might come back to Australia, and wouldn't we love seeing him back in Australia?
Who's going to afford him? Yeah. That's right. Who's going to afford Eddie Jones? Austin Healey was the other one to sink the boot in too. So they're lining up for Eddie Jones now. Super Rugby Aotearoa, just to finish off with, good news, I guess, with the travel bubble. It's just the timing of it, and does it all fit together? Yeah,
fingers crossed. For everyone involved, I suppose, that Jacinda Ardern is going to announce on April 6 when the Trans-Tasman bubble is going to fire up. The talk last week in New Zealand media was that it'd be take a month to set up. That'd put it right at the start of early May. The competition's due to start mid-May, so Rugby Australia and the Super Rugby clubs are very, very hopeful that it'll be all guns blazing, good to go mid-May.
There's been some good storylines out of the Kiwis rugby this year, hasn't there? The Chiefs finally getting their first win after 11 losses on the trot. That's just unheard of. But how about the Blues? Like, I know the Crusaders rolled them in the end, but gee, they're an exciting team. And It pays to remember Daniel Halangahu, our old mate Hangers, is the backs coach over there, and he's got an interesting dilemma next year. He's got to somehow fit Roger Tuivasa-Sheck into his backline. So
nice
good luck, Hangers.
Yeah, so there it is, Ros. Good news, potentially, with that travel bubble opening up. We can look forward to some Trans-Tasman rugby.